Hello there. Welcome to the Word Cafe podcast. This podcast has been designed with created content that centers on the power of words. Can we really do anything without speaking? Can we really do anything without the agency of words? Yes, that is what this podcast is all about. And I am your host, Amakri Isobe, your neighborhood word trader. I believe in the power of words, for it is the unit of creation. I trade in words to profit my world. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good everything, wherever you are on the surface of the earth listening to me. I love it when we come into this space. You know how we say it, this is our safe space, where we come to lean on one another's experience to forge a positive path. How are you? How are you doing where you are today? What's it like? Well, for me, I'm somewhere, in Nigeria, the Federal Capital Territory, and the weather seemed to be like taking, going on a break. I mean, the rains, and we have what we call Hamatan, the dry season, which you will call somewhere in Europe winter. We have it now coming in. Well, I'm good. I'm fine. We're back. So what are we going to be doing today? I guess you're wondering. Yes, we always have something interesting to talk about. And today, today, what am I going to be talking about? I am doing something I enjoy doing, storytelling. I have someone, in the studio with me today. And we are going to be looking at storytelling and human development. She is a wonderful personality. Her name is Timi Yesebo. And I got to meet her somewhere, and an interesting personality. When you check her profile, her page, she colors it with books, you see different, and all of that. It's always interesting. Well, let me just pause it there and bring her on so that you'll see her, and we'll pick it up from there. Where is she, you're wondering? Well, there she is. Hi, Timmy.
Hi, I'm Max. It's good to be here.
Lovely having you here. Lovely. How are you?
I'm very good. And you?
Very well. Very well. What's it like at your end? What's happening? I know you're somewhere around Nigeria.
Yes, I'm in Lagos, and I heard you talking about the weather, and we're having also a little bit of a dry spell.
Okay. So the northeasterly wind is blowing somehow, and it's coming towards that end. So we'll start experiencing Hamatan. Lovely having you here. So let's allow Tini say something about herself, introduce herself. Let's get to meet her. Who is this wonderful personality?
Who am I? I'm somebody who loves people and believes that people have stories. Everybody has a story to tell. Mm-hmm. The challenge is that some people don't know how to tell it properly, and that's where I come in. Every person, organization, communities, nations, we all have stories to tell, But how do we tell this story? Some of us don't know how to tell it properly, and that's what I do. I just come along to help people to facilitate the storytelling journey. So I could do it as a ghost writer, come alongside you. You tell me your story and I write it for you. I could do it as an editor. You write your story and I edit it. So, but basically, I just help people tell their stories.
Wonderful. So I see why. I am drawn to your space because more or less like it's a kindred spirit. When I see people who love words and have the ability to manipulate it, to the advantage of humanity, it tickles my fancy. I just like, how do you do that? How do you get to do that? And all of that. And you're about the second ghostwriter I'm having on this show. It's amazing when I see ghostwriters, the way they work, somehow I find myself in that mode too, because I write and all of that. Good to have you here. So why storytelling? What is storytelling all about? Because each time we come into that space and we raise that conversation, certain people kind of look at storytelling to be one of it's one of those things that there's nothing serious about storytelling and all of that. But I know it's not true. There is something about storytelling that defines, our reality and our world. So what do you have to say about that?
I think that, we are all telling stories all the time,
Yeah.
So storytelling, I think is a buzzword that came into view, I don't know, maybe like 10 years ago. Everywhere you're just hearing the word storytelling, everybody was using it. But it's actually something that we've been doing all along. It's just simply gathering information. I think the simplest way I can say it is gathering information, sharing information in an engaging and in an engrossing way, in a way that elicits or evokes an emotional response from people. And, from the dawn of humanity, we talk about oral tradition, how our forefathers, they didn't know how to read or write, but they told stories to their children, who told stories to their children. What are we doing here today? Two of us are having a conversation. We're telling stories about our lives, about situations, about storytelling. So storytelling is something that we all do. And it's just, I think for the professionals, it just, we have mastered the art of doing it more skillfully. That's right.
All right. I read a piece the other day, and the writer was talking about the earth being a narrated entity. Like, what we know about the world, the earth, and everything is what we were told from one generation to the other. And he went, I think somewhere in the US, he went to what's this place now? The Naval College or something that had to do. There's a lot of history there. And he came out on the bus ride or so. He said he came in contact with this group of women who were, and he was like, what are you guys up to? They said they're trying to gather as much as they can, historically speaking, telling the story of the US, packaging it in such a way that they would transmit it to their children and grandchildren. And he's a Nigerian anyway, and he was really fascinated. And it's like, why aren't we doing that in this part of the world? Telling our stories in such a manner that we will take pride in, and just like you said, eliciting that positive emotion that would drive us to nation building and all that. Why aren't we doing that from where you stand?
I think we're doing it, maybe not in the way that those ladies were doing it. Literacy is important. So one method of doing it is gathering information and writing it down. Another method is via oral tradition, passing the stories. So people, so let me use my grandmother, for example. She's now late, but when she was alive, she was trying to tell me about her life. I mean, she wasn't literate, so she could only talk, and she was speaking pidgin English, Pidgin. Warri is a part of Nigeria where the pidgin English is a bit strong. So it was difficult for me to, it was difficult for me to understand. But what was she actually doing? She was passing her history to me. And I was a teenager. I wanted to go, and when she would call me, I'd be like, can this woman leave me alone because I want to go out and play with my friends? And it was only later on in life that I was like, I should have listened. She had things she wanted to share, especially about the Civil War. Because she'd always say to me, she was concerned that I couldn't speak the Nigerian language with fluency. And she would say, but when the war comes again, what will you speak when they ask you? And I was like, what are you talking about? And she was saying that during the war, to prove which side you were, whether you were the Nigerian or the Biafra side, the soldiers would ask you to speak a language. So that was she was telling me. So it's not that it's not happening, but I appreciate what those women were doing as well, because things can get lost as we tell these stories over and over, but there's something about writing and gathering it down. And so I think that here we have to put a premium and a value on literacy and on gathering information, on writing our history down. And we haven't actually seen it as something that we should really do.
Okay.
In a recent write-up book review that I did, one of the things I talked about was the fact that history really isn't taught in schools. And I remember asking my sister and some friends, I said, come on, did you have a Biafra in school? Were we taught? And it was like, no, we weren't taught about it. So I think that there's also this thing in this country, because we're saying that why don't we do this? There's all this thing in this country where we're trying to hide. So I don't know, some information is as if these things come out, it will destroy the country. So let's keep it to ourselves. You understand? But having said that, in a small measure, I mean, we say we're 200 million people, but in my experience, more and more people, I'm being hired, I'm being called to help. People are saying, my father is getting older and he has a lot of stories to tell. Can you come and help put his stories together? You know, and it's something I really enjoy. And I've had the privilege of hearing, for example, the Civil War stories from different perspectives. You know, people's lived experience, each one is different, each one is unique. So I'm saying that increasingly, but again, it's a very small percentage. It also can be costly to do. So maybe, which is why sometimes people are like, when they think of the cost, but there are different ways of doing it. I've encouraged people that there are different ways. Look, if you don't even have the resources right now, you could interview your parents, or you could interview people and keep the records and later have it transcribed and put together and stuff. So we don't value it. I think that's the short answer. Sorry for going on.
I can relate with your grandmother, because my granddad also, he was a fisherman, you know, who did a lot of fishing along the coast, the Niger Delta coast. I remember then he would tell us stories of how he traveled from the Buguma axis. You know, for those of us who know River State so well, Buguma is one of the coastal towns. You know, he moved from there all the way to Uguta and back. Uguta is somewhere in Imo State there, you know, and all of that. And in all of those wonderful stories, even about the Civil War and all that. So one of these days I sat down, he passed when I was still, I think, in my secondary school or university, and I can't really remember, you know, but I just sat down and started playing everything back, and I took my pen and paper and I started putting them down the best way I could, remembering everything he said, because my mom also reinforced it. She also has translated. So about the Civil War, about Port Harcourt, about the Delta, things that happened, you know, that he saw, he transmitted it to her. She told us, we also heard from him. But now today, I see how rich it is, because those things I've written about them, yet to publish anyway. But I just I can tell what the past was like. And somehow the future leaves a clue in the past. So you don't have to repeat those things again. You just learn. You know, I know it's expensive, like you said, but imagine what it will cost us if we repeat those same things again. Just imagine that ignorance, because we're ignorant of it and we repeat it again. So I quite appreciate that. Now, do you think, let's say, corporate entities should support this in terms of our history, our story, and all of that? Like corporate entities coming into sponsoring and seeing that these things are treasured and transmitted properly.
Yes, I think that they should. It's a very important part of it, and there's a gap. So you have companies thinking about corporate social responsibility and how to give back, and I think that is one way that they can. I know an author that I work with her on her books, and one of the things she's doing, she has a passion to tell the story of our heroes. You know, in Nigeria, our national anthem, there's a part that says the labor of our heroes past shall never be in vain. So those heroes past, she wants to write books for children about these heroes so they can grow up knowing about the various and take pride in their nation and the heroes past. And I know that she's seeking corporate sponsorship. You understand? So I don't know how far she's gone, but we discussed it and looking at which organizations are more likely to sponsor these kinds of things. So yes, they should get. I believe that they should get into it. It is really good. You know, I think his name is Michael Crichton. He has a saying that if you don't know your history, you're like a leaf that does not know that it is part of a tree. You understand?
True.
So
yeah, very true.
Yeah, so it's very important. And I think it's an important part of giving back. I worked with a gentleman. He has his own, but okay, this is personal, so it's not really corporate because he wasn't doing it for his company. But he's an Italian that had been in Nigeria for so many years. He came into Nigeria as a young man and he stayed here for over 30 years. And he wanted to write a book about his experience. In fact, he seemed to know more about Nigeria than me because it was like, have you been here? Have you been here? He had explored and he wanted to write about it. So yes, I think corporates should do more of those kinds of things.
The story you just told now brings one other as in a memory to me. Maybe you must have come across her name, Professor K. Williamson. Maybe you must have come across herself and her brother. They spent so much time in Nigeria, particularly the Niger Delta, and I think she finally told her family she wants to take the nationality of Nigeria and precisely Bayelsa, Yenagoa and all that. She did a work, some time ago that I stumbled upon about the Kalabari language. And I picked the piece of paper and I was going through it. Apparently, she put everything, the language, the sentences, the what they will call maybe syntax and semantics of the grammar, how to use a particular term and, piece it with the other. And I was like, for real, how did she do this? Because I'm from Kalabari, obviously. Looking at it, I speak the language also. So I was like, wow, this is amazing. But I now asked myself, I think she did some job in Uniport as a University of Port Harcourt, Choba, River State. She lectured there for a while and all of asking myself, so she's gone now. What are we doing with all the work she has done in furthering this as far developing our culture and all that? So how can we paint this picture about storytelling and the development of our society? How do you think we can go about this?
I think the professor you mentioned, I must have heard her name in person. I don't know about her work, but that is awesome. What she did is really awesome. We have Professor, I'm trying to remember his name because he writes stuff about the John Nation. He's done a lot of.
Is it Orchin?
No, not Orchin. Oh, I during the break I wanted to quickly run somewhere and go through my books to see if I was, because he's done quite a bit on the John Nation as well, and I've read a few of his work. So we do have some people. So it's not that people aren't doing it, and I want to over time, different parts, northern Nigeria, western Nigeria, we have people that have also delved into such. But I think what me and you are talking about, what you and I are talking about, is that on a greater scale.
Yeah.
We need to see it on a greater scale. So kudos to all those. Kudos to the professor you mentioned. I hope to remember this professor, his name, before the conversation is over. But so many others are also. So I just wanted us to acknowledge them as well. They're doing good work.
Great jobs, honestly.
Yes.
Because each time I stumble upon their work, it helps to shape my understanding of this entity, as in the nation called Nigeria, the different parts and all of that. And the truth is, I tell myself, sometimes my daughter, she you tell her a story like over and over again, she wants to hear that same story. She would just walk up to me, Daddy, tell me a story. And I said, okay, which one? She would just say that same one. And it's like, babe, you've heard that story over and over again. So why do you want me to say? She said, I just want to hear it. I just want to hear it. And in my understanding, when she keeps saying that, it's like she's trying to relate with, and she always points it out. I want to hear your story. Don't tell me another person's story. Your story when you were a child, growing up, what happened, and all of that. So I try to say that it's like she's trying to weave her own reality on the strength, on the basis or premise of my own story. It's like, okay, Daddy did this at so and so time, so I can do this. So I tell myself, listening to her each time she comes, having this in our schools, because obviously the historical aspect and storytelling about our culture, our tradition has been yanked off. Like you said a while ago, it feels like we're trying to hide something. We're trying to hide something as a nation. We don't want to talk about it. For me, it's troubling, honestly. It's troubling. And I want to see how we can, maybe I ask you this question, how do we break that cycle, bringing back storytelling about our history and all that back to school? How can we do that?
I heard you, and if I heard you
All
correctly,
right.
you're talking about your concern about the fact that our history isn't really being taught in schools, in our institutions, and how we can break that. So I think it all goes back to, because if we don't have the curriculum for it, a school in isolation can be teaching something that the government hasn't approved, quote unquote. So it's going back to, I don't even think that it's that they don't understand the policymakers, the importance of it. I think it's fear. I think it's today. I a couple of days ago, I asked somebody. I said, so if we had to put Biafra, the Civil War, in our history books for our students, how would it be written? And I think it would be controversial. Whose side do you want to tell? But I'm like, we have to be able to come together and produce one side that we can present and teach in school that is, quote unquote, not offensive, that is acceptable to everybody. And then later, as we can read Half of a Yellow Sun, we can read there's a book by Frederick Forsyth on Biafra, different books we can read and write, but we should have one that way, so it's just us coming together and sitting together. But there's just been this thing, like we said, it could be fear, it could be it's going to destroy the nation, it could be people don't want to be exposed for the things that they feel they have done, so the only other way, I think, is we parents should not leave the development and teaching of our children to schools alone. Like I said,
True.
My grandmother, like you said, your mother, your grandfather, we're feeding you stories. And so we can, begin to also on our own part feed these stories and organize different events, extracurricular events outside of the classrooms, and then we can encourage our children to read, write. But again, you might ask, where are the books? How am I encouraging my children? So we also need to write these books and dumb down the language, because if I'm thinking of books about I'm just using the Civil War as an example. For example, I can't even think of a book that is written for children, as it were. So those are what we can do as till we get to the legislature, till we get into positions where we can push for policy, where we can lobby policymakers to say, hey, look, this is very important. And this needs, we can't, we need this as part of our story. Like you said, what was that quote again? That those who don't know the history of the past are subject or are condemned to repeat it. So we need to push those things. But there are things, so it's not like we're completely helpless while we're looking for policy change on a macro or national level. There are things that you and I and at least those listening to us can begin to do right away. Yes. Well, I
Amazing.
mean, like you
Amazing.
said, storytelling so important, so important to even shape our national identity. You
True.
know,
True.
you know how America. I mean, forget what's happening today, whether far right, far left, whatever. But I mean, when you think of America, think of. I mean, people say God's own country, land,
Yeah.
liberty, the pursuit of land, liberty. They have like a national story. And
Mm-hmm.
I posed this question to a couple of people. I said, "What's Nigeria's national story? What are what is that thing that we all? Yeah, unity in diversity. We are diverse people, to over 250 ethnic groups. But what is our story? What can we say
What's that
pulls us
story?
together?" And somebody laughed and said, "Football now, because when Nigeria is playing, when national team is playing, you don't hear Hausa, Yoruba, this, that. That's our
At
national
all.
sport." And I said,
Yeah.
yes, that's national sport. But what's our national story? And for me, sitting here today, remember, I think it was Yar'Adua's time. So I don't know the year. That's why I just called the president. But the Minister of Information, that was Dora Akin of the NAFDAC fame, you
Yeah.
know. And she tried to give us a national story. I think it was Good People, Great Nation. Tried to rebrand, and we tried to get the nation to rally around this story. But it wasn't really authentic because it wasn't really credible at that time, you know. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking, what is our national story? What binds us together? And I know there's something we say. This just occurred to me when I was asking people, I think about it. There's something that we say, Nigeria know they carry last.
We need a carry last.
Yes, so I think it connotes that idea of resilience. We're resilient people, we're innovative, and I was like, isn't that something that we see all across, north, south, east, west, that we're resilient, we're innovative, they say we're the happiest people in the world. We know how to have a good time despite, which is, I guess, the definition of resilience.
Not minding the challenges we're facing.
Not minding the challenges we're facing. So I think we can build a national story and begin to take pride in who we are, and things like maybe Nigeria know they carry that, push it forward and let that be sort of like our story and build on that. I know that things are in the nation right now, people are living, what do we call it, japa, people are disillusioned or whatever. But maybe we can build a national story that gives hope and something something that is common to all of us, which is Nigeria know they carry last. We're confident, we're resilient, we don't have to have a good time, we're innovative, we're enterprising, So that's the importance of stories. So I think we're touching on why stories are important, because they help to shape an identity, help to shape a culture, help to give us a national narrative,
Yeah. Amazing. Guys, we are talking with Timi. You can feel her energy, the way she's expressing herself, about storytelling, nationhood, how it helps to build that identity, and we all embrace it. I like what she just said. When you look at the country, Nigeria, and you try to see what binds us, what brings us together, that word, Nigeria, they carry last. We don't. We always we find a way through everything. We surmount the challenges and we just come back, and you just see that smile on our faces. And we always use that. After we say Nigeria, they carry last, we close it with this word, God day. We always end it with that statement. And it's true, honestly. And it's been, if we can lash in on that and say that this is what binds us, our national story as a people, amazing. Now, before I let you go, I'm going to ask you this question. As a writer, ghostwriter, how do you process, or should I say, what's your process like? You want to write, you want to support somebody, how do you begin? From where do you begin and where do you end it?
Okay, so my process, like I said in the beginning, I'm someone who believes that everybody has a story to tell, every community, so that's my first premise, and I try to listen, to you. So I'm asked if you tell me, if we start to talk about writing, the first part of my process is to listen a lot. What do you want to do? What story do you want to tell? and to even a lot of times people aren't even sure that they have a story to tell. They say, "Oh, I want to write a story," but when you begin to talk to them, they're like, "I don't know." So I try to even validate that and let you know that indeed you have a story to tell, and then we begin to look at the medium. So the medium I've used a lot is writing. That's been my comfort zone, even though I'm expanding. But so sometimes when I listen to people, I find that sometimes writing, it might not even be the medium that they need. I remember somebody coming to me, "I want to write this book, but in talking with me, I found out that, hey, do you know you'd be better off with a vlog? Go and do a video vlog. Just go to YouTube and tell these your stories on YouTube." So I think that's where I also like to listen, see what they're trying to achieve. And sometimes you find that writing is not, it could be a podcast, it could be go and vlog on YouTube, or then if it's like a book, one of the first things we do is try to make a book plan, to have a structure. So even if you wanted to do it on your own, some people are like, okay, I'm not sure or maybe a ghostwriter is so expensive, but I really want to write for myself. I don't know where to start. And I say a book plan is a good place to start. And what is a book plan really? It's like, what's the premise of my book? Why am I writing this book? What is the book about? So we break it down. Who is my audience? Does this book already exist in the market? Is this book necessary? Is it vital for time? So we do all of that. So, and then we get into the nitty-gritty of just structuring the book. Just what will my chapter 1 be about? What will my chapter 2 be about? So once you have that book plan, some people can use that book plan and sit down and write their own book. But even for me as a ghostwriter, that is a guide. It's not hard and fast, but it keeps us on track, because ghostwriting is like project management in its own way. So you want to do this thing in 3 months, in 6 months. So you need to have a plan. It's not hard and fast. You can change it, but at least it's a guide. So that is, I don't know if that was what you were looking for when you asked about my process. I don't know if that answer satisfies.
You just more or less, like you said, it's like project management. Individuals, we differ. How do you run your process? Somebody will tell you, I run my process from, like, I was discussing with somebody and we're talking about movies, and we're trying to understand how you watch movies and all of that. And I said, okay, for example, if you've seen Lord of the Rings, that's Peter Jackson. He did a work on Lord of the Rings, J.K. Tolkien's book. I said he shot the movie backwards. He did, rather, the book, he adapted it into a movie. He did it backwards, like he told the story backwards, the end to the beginning. And the person was like, really? I said, yes. What you saw as the end of the movie was the beginning of the book, and what you saw as the beginning of this movie was the end of the book. So his process now, such people, you see their process is like, it's not straightforward. They start from the middle and they go either way. But at the end of the day, a picture is created in your mind and you begin to like put all of them together. And exactly like what you just explained now, that's the process. You sit with the person, you ask questions and all of that. I mean, in a nutshell, it is project management 101. You have a timeline. You don't execute it, no problem. Adjust your timeline again. Like we'll say, break anybody, tear anybody's certificate or anything. It's your work, and all of that.
So that's the sort of like, so because I realized that in this whole discussion, I haven't talked about, it's as if there's no creativity. There's a lot of creativity. So if you're gonna be an effective ghostwriter, writer, editor, whatever, you're going to use the left and the right side of your brain. So you have the project management side of then you have the creative, some creatives struggle. They can only do the creative side. And that means that their work is sort of like a mess, but you have to bring the best of both worlds. You have to be able to sort of like project manage and then engage your creative side as well. So there's a lot of creativity that goes into it. Listening to somebody, drawing people out, especially in ghostwriting. So people come and tell me, I remember I had a client who said, I just done 50, I hit so many milestones, and I want to write a book and just tell it as it is, tell all. I was like, okay, really? And we started, and she said a lot of personal things. I would just let you talk, and I'll be recording and prompting you because, obviously as you're talking, something needs further clarification and all of that.
Yeah.
And so my work is to go back, take all that information. What is the best way that I can put together? Because people talk freely and they don't talk. I don't force you to talk in a logical sequence. Just chat as you're free, because that's the best way to get the story out. So after you have chatted in all kinds of direction, I go back, I take it. That's my job, to take it and look at it and say, what is the best way that I can put it together to make this an engaging and engrossing story? So the first thing is to put a hook. If you cannot get somebody in the first paragraph, they're going to throw your book away. So how can I take all this information and put in such a way that once you read, you're like, oh my God, what happened next? And you want to continue. Do you know what I mean? So that's my job. But then again, like I said, people talk sort of like freely. And then when you do a draft, let's say we do draft chapter 1, and I bring it back to you, when they read it in the cold light of day, they're like, please remove this part. Did I say this? So this was somebody who said, I want people to just know about my life. So like, remove this part. If my mother sees this, please, my father is still alive. Remove this. So it's very interesting. You sign NDAs because you can't go and talk about, because the final product, there's so many things that don't go into the final product. Do you understand? So very interesting. I enjoy people. Do you understand? So I enjoy listening to people. I enjoy people's stories as well. So there's that creative aspect of it, even drawing people out. I've been with somebody. I was writing for well-accomplished foreign personality, and I had to interview her husband for the book. He was one of my hardest subjects because he didn't even believe his wife should be writing the book in the first place. To get him to talk. So it's also an art, interviewing and getting people to open up. So I remember he was saying something about his wife, and I was saying, so how did you meet her? And he said, we met in university, blah, blah. Just give me this dry story. And I said, did you not, what was it about her that was appealing? Wasn't she? He said, now you're a woman, just write it. I said, no, sir, I can't just write anything. Can you not just tell me, was she not beautiful? It was so difficult for him to say that she was beautiful and he was attracted to her. He just kept saying, just write anything. I was like, so there's a creative side, there's a listening side, there's the ability to draw people out and to get their stories and to get the best out of it. Some stories are traumatic, for example, and remembering is very painful. You have to show a lot of empathy and sympathy, sensitivity. People are crying, and you realize that this is the crux of the book, and you need to get the story. So you might have to do, in cinema, I guess they'll say, we need to do take 1, take 2, take 3. So you might find that you need to do several. At some point, you might find that the person says, I don't want to talk about it anymore. And you just have to stop and maybe come back another day and try again to get the story. So it's really interesting. It's lovely. I love what I do. Telling other people's stories. Storytelling is so important. People have so much to share with the world. We understand our world better as we read. Like you said, your daughter keeps asking, she's trying to make sense of her world. We make sense of our world. We have empathy. Even in learning, even in the corporate thing we're talking about, you go for a meeting and the CEO is giving dry statistics and people are bored and they want to take their phone and be looking at Instagram. So you have to present that thing in a compelling and engaging way using storytelling and techniques. Scientists have studied this whole thing where they say that when people are listening to stories, at least 2 parts of our brains, or our brain produces 2 chemicals. I think it's cortisol that helps you to focus attention, and is it oxytocin that gets that emotive connection, care response, and stories follow a particular arc to be able to do it. So that's why I said that everybody has stories to tell. As storytellers, we just know the techniques to make it engaging and draw people in.
Yeah. Wow. I this conversation, we were telling ourselves it's going to be like 20 minutes and all of that, but you can see
Yes.
we've done almost an hour because
Ooh.
storytelling is an amazing subject, an amazing topic. The minute you get into it, coming out is so difficult. I want to say a very big thank you to you for having acting to do this and sharing this with my audience. Before I let you go, the way I always, I always ask this question to my audience, to my guests, where do we catch you? Because a couple of people are listening to you now. They're like, wow, I never knew somebody like this existed, within the ghost writing space and storytelling space. So where do we catch you if we want to catch you? How do we catch you?
Okay, I think one of the best and easiest ways to catch me is on LinkedIn, Timmy Yesebo. I'm sure you'd have my name and my surname up. So yes, LinkedIn is a good place to catch me. I have a blog called livelytwist.com. I don't write, I think I haven't written it in the last 2-3 years. So it's hard to catch me there, but LinkedIn is a space where I still put out book reviews from time to time, with my opinion and all of that, which is interesting. I think the responses are usually interesting. So that's one space that I think it's you can catch me easily on. And I want to thank you so very much for having me. This has been a very interesting conversation. I've learned a lot from you as well.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So guys, you've heard her. You can catch her on LinkedIn. That's where I caught her myself, as in, like I said, in the introduction, her page is just covered with beautiful books. You just see the colors and everything flying all over. So go follow her, as in listen to her work, read it up and all of that. But you guys know how we do it on the show. You know how we say it. This is that space. It's that space where we come to lean on one another's, stories, yes, to forge a positive path. And this is a positive path, like Timmy has said. Well, time is not our friend, but we just have to keeping up, keep showing, like we say. You never can tell. Your story will be that one that would change somebody's life, change somebody's situation. You know how we say it on the show. Till I come your way again. Bye for now. Timmy?
Thank you so much. Bye for now.
Awesome time it has been with you on the World Cafe podcast today. Thank you for being there. You can catch me up on my social media handles, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, all at Amakri Isoboye. Also, you can get copies of my books, A Cocktail of Words, The Color of Words, my HRO notebook, and Hocus Focus on God on Amazon and Roving Heights online bookstores. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel at the same address at Amakri Isoboye. I love to hear from you and how this podcast has impacted you. You can leave me a message at my email address, amakrigaribaldi@gmail.com. That is AMACHREEGARIBALDI. Yes, till I come your way again. Bye for now.